everyone, welcome back to Tech World with Sahana. In today's video, I'm going to talk about something super important if you are learning Kubernetes. That's right, we are diving into the chapter 3 of Kubernetes pods. If you haven't watched chapter 1 and 2 on basics and architecture, I will share the link in the description and also pin them to the comments. Check them out before starting with chapter 3. Here's a list of all the topics that I am going to cover today. And do stay with me till the end because we are going to create PodYAML from the scratch for a Java application with smart logging. So without any further ado, let's get started. Let's start with what is pod. A pod is the smallest and most basic deployable unit in Kubernetes. It represents one or more containers that share the same network namespace, the same storage volumes, the same lifecycle. Think of your pod like a wrapper around your application's containers. Now let's talk about pod's lifecycle. Imagine you have developed a software application. Okay, so now Kubernetes is the system that decides where it should run, how much power does it need, and also make sure it is healthy. So when you create a pod, here's what actually happens. Number 1, pending. Pod definition accepted, scheduling in progress. So, as soon as you create your pod, it enters the pending state. This means Kubernetes has received your pod specifications, but it hasn't scheduled or started yet. It may remain in pending due to node resource availability checks, image being pulled from a container registry, volume claims being provisioned, or misconfiguration in YAML file. Number 2, running. Pod scheduled, containers are up. Once a suitable node is assigned and all prerequisites are met, the pod status become running. This means containers are now initialized and executing inside the node. You can now access the container logs, port forward to test services, and also begin actual debugging or load testing. Number 3, succeeded. Container completed successfully. If the application runs to completion and exits cleanly, Kubernetes marks the pod as succeeded. This typically applies to jobs or cron jobs that execute once, like backup scripts, report generation, or data migration tasks. Number 4, failed. Container terminated with error. If the container crashes or exits with a non zero code, the pod moves to failed state. The possible reasons could be application error, configuration issues, port conflict, or failed init containers. You can check with kubectl logs or kubectl describe pod for troubleshooting. Number 5, unknown. Node unreachable or state not reported. If the control plane can't reach the node where the pod was running due to network issues or node failure, the status is unknown. Kubernetes can't verify the current state, so it marks it as such until the node responds or the situation is resolved. Now, let's talk about what are init containers. Before that, let's also understand why not just one main container. Let's say you have a pod that runs your Java application. But before the application even starts, you need to download a config file from somewhere, wait for another service to be ready, or do some setup like database migration. So here's the thing, if you try to handle all these logics inside one main container, it becomes very messy. You do not want your application to carry all these extra baggages. That's where init container comes in. Here's a very simple definition that you can remember for init container. An init container is like a helper container that runs before your main application starts and only once. Now let's talk about how Kubernetes runs a pod with init container. Kubernetes runs init containers one by one. It starts the first one, waits until it's completely done, then moves to the next. Only after all the init containers finish, the main container starts. So they run one after another and never run at the same time. Now let's check out real world init container scenario.
Let's say your Java application connects to MySQL DB. You want your application to wait until the database is fully ready. So you move that logic into a separate container that just waits for the DB. We have created a pod YAML here, which first runs the temporary container that waits until the database service becomes reachable on port 3306. Only after the database is confirmed to be up, the main application container is started.
So, this ensures that your application doesn't start too early and fails due to database being unavailable. Here's two important points you should remember. Number one, if your init container fails, your pod will not proceed with the main container. And number two, you must fix the issue with your init container or else it will keep on retrying forever. Now let's discuss multi container pods.
A multi-container pod is a single Kubernetes pod that runs two or more containers together. They share the same network, share volumes, and are also tightly coupled to work as a unit. They are not just randomly grouped. Each container has a specific role. The reason we use multi containers in a pod is to break the responsibilities into smaller reusable parts. Like one does the main job, the other assists with it.
There's two common pattern in multi-container pod: sidecar pattern and ambassador pattern.
Number one, sidecar pattern. In this setup, one container runs the main application and another container runs next to it, just to help. For example, if the application writes logs, the sidecar sends those logs to the logging system. And suppose if the application saves the file, the sidecar backs it up. They run together, often share storage, network, and the sidecar usually runs the whole time the application is running. Number two, ambassador pattern. In this setup, a helper container acts like a middleman, like a proxy between your application and something outside the pod. For example, if your application connects to a database, the ambassador manages the connection, adds security, or handles failover. And if your application talks to another service, the ambassador tweaks the request before sending it. The main application just talks to localhost, and the ambassador takes care of reaching the actual external service.
Now let's talk about the basic pod YAML structure.
API version specifies which version of Kubernetes API to use for this object. Kind. This defines the type of Kubernetes object being created, like pod or deployment. Metadata. This holds identifying data like the pod name, labels, annotations. Name. Unique name for the pod in the namespace. Labels. These are key value pairs used for grouping and selection. Spec. These are the specification. It describes the desired state and configuration of the pod. Containers. List of containers to run inside the pod. Name is the name of container, image is the Docker image to be used, ports are the list of ports the container will expose. Env is the environment variable for the container. Volume mounts defines where to mount shared volumes. Resources. CPU and memory limits and requests. Init container. This is optional, like special container which we just discussed that runs before the main container. Volumes are also optional. These are like shared storage definitions accessible to all containers. Restart policy. This defines what happens if the container crashes. We have like we can use values like always, on failure, or never. If we use the value always, it is also like the default value. It restart containers every time it exits. On failure restarts only if the container exits with a non-zero exit code. And we use never when we do not restart the container no matter how it exits.
Next, we will learn about pod networking in Kubernetes. Pod networking in Kubernetes refers to how pod communicate with each other, with services, and also with the external world.
Number one, pod to pod communication. Pods can freely talk to each other using their IPs. No special setup is needed, and this is a default Kubernetes behavior. DNS names are resolved by core DNS. Pod to service communication. Services acts as stable endpoint for pods. When a pod wants to talk to another application, it usually talks to a service, not directly to pod IP. Number 3, pod to external communication. Pods can access external websites or APIs by default. You can restrict this using network policies. Number 4, CNI plugins. CNI is Container Network Interface. Kubernetes uses CNI plugins to actually set up the pod network. These handle assigning IPs, routing, and enforcing policies.
Now, let's learn about affinity rules in Kubernetes. We have two type of affinity in Kubernetes pods. One, pod affinity, number 2, pod anti-affinity. Pod affinity is used when you have multiple pods and you want a set of pods to be scheduled on a particular node. You can control that with pod affinity. But suppose you have multiple pods and you want a group of pods to not schedule on a certain node. You can control that with the help of pod anti affinity.
Suppose you have a logging agent and an app backend, and you want the logging agent pod to be scheduled on the same node as the backend pod to collect logs locally. This pod affinity rule uses required during scheduling, ignored during execution, which means Kubernetes must follow this rule at the scheduling time, but can ignore it later if the condition changes. It tells the scheduler only place this pod on a node where there's already a pod with label backend. The label selector block defines which pods to match, and the topology key that we have, this ensures the rule applies at the node level, meaning co-location on the same node is mandatory before scheduling. Now suppose you have multiple replicas of the same backend pod and you want to ensure no two backend pod are scheduled on the same node to avoid single point of failure. This pod anti-affinity rule uses required during scheduling, ignored during execution, which means Kubernetes must avoid placing this pod on a node where the matching pods already exist. But it can ignore this rule after scheduling if needed. It instructs the scheduler that do not schedule this pod on the same node as any pod with the label app backend. The label selector matches pod with app backend, and this topology key applies the rule at the node level, ensuring these pods are spread across different nodes for better availability.
Now, let's start with some hands on. Let's create PodYAML from the scratch for a real world scenario.
You are deploying a Java based order service that requires a MySQL database to be reachable before the application starts. Write logs to a file and you want to stream them using a sidecar container. You also need to restart on failure and also should ideally run on the same node as another app labeled app payment service. You also want to be able to debug the pod using standard tools like kubectl. Now let's build this YAML step by step. Okay, so first we have this basic pod structure, and this just sets up the pod with its name, label, and core specification block the foundation for adding containers, volumes, and more that we will need. Step number 2, we will add a init container here. So we are adding this init container named wait for DB using a lightweight busybox image. In the command, we use a loop to continuously check if the MySQL service at port 3306 is reachable. This ensures the main application container starts only after the database is up and accessible, improving the reliability during pod startup. In step 3, let's add some volume for log sharing. So we are creating a volume named log volume using a empty directory, which allows container in the pod to share log files or temporary data during runtime. In step number 4, we will have the main application containers specifications. We are adding the Java application container which runs on port 8080 and write logs to the app.log using the mounted log volume for shared log storage. In step number 5, we will add the sidecar container. So we are adding a log forwarder container using the busybox image that tails the log in real time, streaming logs to std out by mounting the same log volume. In step number 6, we are adding a restart policy. We are using always to ensure pod automatically restarts the container if they crash. In the last step, we will add a pod affinity rule. Here we are setting a soft affinity rule using prefer during scheduling, ignore during execution. It tells Kubernetes to try to place this pod on the same node as another pod with the label app payment service. We define the topology key as well, which means the preference applies at the node level, encouraging co-location for better performance or shared resources.
So that is it for chapter 3 Kubernetes pods. We learned a lot today. What are pods, how pod works, what are init container, how init container works, YAML files, pod networking, affinity rules, YAML files, restarts, how pod communicate with each other, and so much more. I know it's a lot to learn, but trust me, once you understand what pod really is, everything else in Kubernetes becomes a lot more easier and makes so much more sense. If this video helped you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Tech World with Sahana. Any questions related to Kubernetes pods, drop them in the comments and I'll make sure to answer them. See you in the next one.